Hope everyone is having a fantastic Thursday evening. It is time for Rugby Lives Here. And usually we talk to the personalities in Singapore Rugby. And well, today we have a special guest who not only was involved in Singapore Rugby, he was involved in the Football Association of Singapore and is now part of World Rugby as the Services Manager for Asia. Yes, it is Ridzal Saat. And we go way back, Ridzal. I mean, as a football player, I saw you around the Football Association of Singapore headquarters at Jalan Besar Stadium. But first love was actually football. You just told me that. So tell me a bit about yourself growing up. What was the sports you played?
I'm the youngest of 14. And everybody else in the family played some sort of sports, right? So, and I went to school where there was rugby in Raffles. This particularly cool Sec 2 guy who keep asking the Sec 1 guys to play rugby, but we was thinking like, what's this game, right? Unfortunately, football season ended early. We lost, obviously. And it came to a time where we didn't have anything to do on Saturday.
Okay.
So I told my friend, why don't we just go for rugby training? So that was the start of rugby for me.
Your love for rugby, yeah.
June, July in secondary 1.
But so secondary 1 is like 13 years old.
12, 13, yeah.
13 years old. So was it difficult for you as perhaps a late bloomer into the game when perhaps the rest started at a young age?
I suppose rugby is a game where, from my time, the players who played the game obviously come from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
Most of the kids who went to Raffles obviously would not have played rugby in primary school. Most of us came from neighborhood schools. And I think the skill sets from football and other sports, from peripheral vision, handling, moving, running, sidestepping, I suppose it came naturally maybe for me. You just need to understand the laws and the regulations. So that was that. And I think I was quite fast when I was younger.
So your older brother, well, one of the older brothers that you have in a massive family is Singapore football legend Ridzal Saat. This is something I just found out a week ago. And, you have a brother that represents Singapore in football. You yourself represented Singapore in rugby. Did he ever try to convert you over?
It wasn't a case of conversion. Like I said, I started playing football first. Conversion is not a pun, rugby pun. Right?
Yeah.
I played football. As a young kid, I would follow Razali and my brothers because I used to play for Marine Parade constituency.
Okay.
And then obviously he played for Farrer Park Youth and then Southsa. So I used to follow my dad to go to the old Jalan Besar to watch him play. I know the family, a few of us with the brothers will go and watch. Sometimes my sisters will go. And then Lion City Cup was a big thing last time at the stadium. We used to get free tickets. So that's where I think probably I saw him first in the Singapore jersey. So it's maybe in a way he inspired me to delve further into sport, I suppose. But my other brothers played sport as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Sundays, because I'm the youngest one, I'll be just sitting at the side watching the older kids play football.
Enough football talk. The name of the show is Rugby Lives Here. So you represented Singapore for the national team. What were some of the highlights and memorable moments of your career?
I suppose there's highlights and there's lowlights, right?
Yeah.
So the biggest lowlight would probably be being part of a team that lost by a huge score to Hong Kong. I think it's still a world record score. It's about 164 to 13. And I think, to be fair to Singapore Rugby, we were run by volunteers who, put their own time and money into the game. And we went into the last game with our coach having to head back to Singapore because he was invigilating an exam.
Wow.
So there you go. I was playing. Terence was also playing in that game, and halftime was almost like 100 points to nil. And we had a team manager who was acting as caretaker coach say to us, try to keep it below 100, which was highly impossible, right? That was quite a wake-up call. I was in final year uni, a week ahead of the media exams as well. Wasn't prepared for the exams, and obviously we weren't prepared for the competition. But what actually started off a chain of events that led to obviously Singapore Rugby being professionalized. And I was lucky then to, I think, work when I graduated from university.
Yeah.
Other major highlights, obviously the first win for us in 15s. We have won a few games. That was around 95, 96 in sevens. But we haven't won 15s, I think, for at least 10 years or maybe more against anybody. And the first win was against Malaysia, rivals.
Yeah.
And that sort of sparked a lot of things. And then myself personally, we got to play at the national stadium where my brother used to play, where I used to watch him play for Singapore in international games, in the Malaysia Cup. So we got to play against China making their debut on the international scale, international level.
Yeah.
And then we got to play again in National Stadium in '98 for the Asian Rugby Championships.
So it's fair to say that you were part of rugby from the stage where, as you say, it was run by volunteers. We are seeing it now trying to grow up in terms of professionalism and getting full-time staff and taking it to the next level. How has it changed? Can you sense the changes in terms of quality in Singapore rugby and in terms of the way that it's been run since the days you were playing?
I suppose after we lost that game, the Singapore Rugby, the president, Dr. Chan, then obviously decided that we needed someone to run the organization. So we appointed our first CEO in '95, and that sparked a lot of changes. Like it was my first job, it was Terence's first job, and a few other guys. We were the first few development officers, and I think back then in '95 it was quite a novelty. Like you don't finish school or graduate from uni and work in sports. People say you're a bit mad. I think people still think we are still a bit mad working in sports. So, and then of course with rugby there's a lot of ups and downs. In sports there's a lot of ups and downs, both off the field and on the field. Like for Hong Kong, we went 164-13 in '94 to 12-10 in '98, '99. So that's quite a tremendous improvement in terms of playing standards. But off the field as well, we went from like 20 schools to 100 schools. And again, we went too quick, too fast. I guess now in terms of rugby, I look at the players, even though they are still amateur, I think they're a bit more professional in their approach to the game. There's so much more support from different aspects, not only from Singapore Sports Council, but from sponsors and partners. You can see that the players are, if you look at them, they are really ripped and really fit. But the challenge again, while we are improving, our neighbors are also improving because the game is a bit more global in that sense. Yeah.
I know you're a very humble guy and you like to play things down, but I think it's massive for a Singaporean to be representing the country at the highest level of rugby in World Rugby, working for them as the services manager for Asia. Maybe tell the audience perhaps what does your job entail? What's the day-to-day job?
I would like to joke this a bit like customer service.
Okay.
So my role as a rugby services manager in World Rugby, as we are now called, there are 6 regional bodies: Asia, Oceania, North America, South America, Europe, and Africa. There is a regional body called Asia Rugby. So I'm sort of the interface person for between World Rugby and Asia Rugby, and also between World Rugby and the World Rugby member unions in Asia. So my job is to actually work closely with Asia Rugby and our members in terms of how they strategically plan, where they want to go with their rugby. So obviously every union in every country is different in terms of development, in terms of performance. My areas of work is mostly into their strategic plan, their governance, and administration. In terms of high performance, obviously in Asia you've got Japan and Hong Kong and China and Korea. So sometimes my colleagues who are more specialized in the area will deal directly. But for me, it's the interfaces with the CEO or the GM, as well as the board of each union.
For yourself, and you were involved, as you said, with the Rugby World Cup in Japan last year, kind of been halted the progress and the momentum from that, moving on to 2020. But what do you hope to see coming off from that when rugby does return? Because do you think there's a sense that it's been given an extra push that rugby was in Japan for the World Cup, and maybe it will just filter through to other nations in Asia?
Yeah, I think a huge part of the Rugby World Cup in Japan, it was the first time was held in a non-European or non-Southern Hemisphere country like Japan, first time in Asia, and there was a reason for it. I think the reason was to reach out to the new markets and also to recognize Japan and Asia as a growth hub for the game. So part of the hosting of the Rugby World Cup in Japan was the Legacy program, which we call Impact Beyond. So Impact Beyond Rugby World Cup 2019. It was a program with a lead up of about 3 to 4 years leading into the Rugby World Cup, where together with Asia Rugby and with the member unions, we set out certain targets. One of the targets was actually to reach out to 1 million new participants in the game, to introduce the game to them, the basics of rugby, passing, running. We actually hit the target a month before the World Cup. And last week, a report came out from Dublin. We actually reached out to 2 million new participants.
Wow.
And the legacy behind it, I think, is more important. I think there is a community across Asia, from west to east, north to south, where the people are really connected, and Singapore Rugby is part of it. And a lot of them are either full-time staff, coaches, but a lot of them are also volunteers. Like if I tell you there's 2,000 female players in Iran playing full contact rugby.
Amazing.
Yeah, I went to Iran for the first time in my life last year, and you get people saying there's 2,000 people and we are organized. Sometimes you're a bit skeptical, right? But actually you see they are there. It's just a case of when they can travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
COVID-19 has impacted everyone in this world. But in terms of rugby, and you mentioned the momentum that perhaps that was gained leading up and then hopefully filtering through after the World Cup. How has that impacted the plans in 2020?
Obviously, it has impacted a lot of plans. First one being of Tokyo Olympics. We were supposed to have rugby sevens for the second time after Brazil. And that was supposed to be the momentum after the Rugby World Cup. But I think I have to say, from a World Rugby perspective and from the unions and Asia Rugby, I think we collectively adapted quite fast. I think the first point of communication was to actually reach out to the unions to understand, from my own job role perspective, was to understand how they're handling COVID-19, how they're handling finances. And then you go down to the integrity, return to play, and then how is the mental health of your staff, and then how are you actually keeping in touch with your stakeholders, because people tend to forget you still have your sponsors, your government, and your different moving parts, right? From a global perspective, I think the first few things that we came out with, just as the COVID-19 sort of accelerated, we talk about return to play, player welfare, not only in terms of following government guidelines, regulation around COVID-19, but also in terms of player welfare, in terms of fitness of players when they go back to training. So based on consultation with Asia Rugby and our unions, we actually created a portal, a site, also a live site where we have coaches and educators talking about basically returning to play both at high performance level and at community level. And then this week itself, good timing for the interview, we will be launching sort of a COVID-19 assistant kit for union, which delves into sponsorship, communications, marketing, and also looking after your staff. So again, this is done not entirely by World Rugby, but through consultation with our members. So obviously it has sort of stopped the momentum, but our unions have adapted, and I think the amount of work like this, things being done virtually is just crazy. Yeah. Mad crazy, yeah.
A lot of sessions, a lot of meetings have gone through Zoom.
Yeah.
It's nice to see that throughout the world, I think sport is slowly returning as well. So hopefully that momentum that was started, and it will take some restarting again, but hopefully that will carry on. You've worked with rugby players, you've worked with football players. Is there a difference?
I think governing bodies at the end is the same, right? Usually most people don't like governing bodies. Right? I mean, really. I mean, the saying is, if you're Singapore Rugby or if you're Asia Rugby or World Rugby, usually the men on the street will say, these guys, they don't know what's going on the ground. So I came from Singapore Rugby where we were fairly small. I worked there for about 15 years in various roles, and we were just a small unit. Then at max we were at 20 people. So when I went to the sort of, for one of a better word, monstrosity that was Football Association, it's 100 people. It was fairly interesting because in Singapore Rugby you do everything, right? You meet sponsors, you write campaigns, you carry the A-boards, you clear the place.
Yeah, you do everything.
Yeah, you do everything. Yeah. But then you go to football, it was fairly interesting being an outsider coming into football, because I think people were a bit wary of who I was. Okay. Plus the fact that...
Did you feel that?
I did. My first day of work, I just popped out my head and said, anybody lunch? And I got zero response.
Oh, man.
I was like, what's happening here, man? And then one guy, young guy came, Shamsul, I think you
Yes.
remember him, said, "Boss, nobody goes lunch with the bosses here." I said, "Huh? What?" So I had to walk to the other department, and I knew a girl there, Tian Xin.
Yeah.
And we went for lunch, and we sat at the food court here, and 20 people sat at the food court over there looking at us. So I suppose it was an eye-opener, and then meeting the clubs as well. You have this perception of professional teams or professional clubs, so it was quite interesting. You have like Home United, which is, wow.
Yeah.
You had the GM layout, the all staff, and they tell you what to do, and then you go to another club. I can't even find the door of the club. So, but I think all in all, I think football was a great experience for me. We had some great results when I was there, not because of me, but because of the team and the coach. And I think maybe the one takeaway that I think I added to football was just to make people talk to one another. It was interesting in the sense people sent emails when I first joined to each other department, and I would like to think I sort of break that barrier, and maybe that's my legacy for football. And I think if I didn't work in football, I probably wouldn't get the World Rugby job as well.
Yeah. I think also explains maybe perhaps why nobody has lunch with me as well. So that's another question that needs to be answered off camera.
Maybe somebody need to interview you.
Maybe. Finally, for you, obviously you're looking at the long-term plan for rugby. In Asia, where do you see it, or where would you like to see it in 5 years?
I suppose in a post-COVID world, we don't know what's the new normal, right? People are still wondering, how they're going to play contact rugby again in some countries, how they're going to get people into the stadium. And also the legacy, Impact Beyond is not only before and up to the Rugby World Cup, but it's after. And Asia Rugby is working really hard in terms of transition, making sure the kids who learn the game, maybe non-contact modified forms of the game, will move into contact versions, or they will stay in the game and become fans and spectators. I think Asia has a bright future in terms of the game, because obviously we have the biggest youth population in the world, and then the various forms of rugby that's available from 7s in the Olympics and 15s. I would like to think that the future is bright. We have a very tight-knit group of people working, especially the staff of the unions, as well as the coaches and educators. I think they just had a coaches session last weekend for Southeast Asia. I wasn't part of it because I'm not equipped to coach. My coaching set died like 15 years ago. I saw the pictures. Like we had like 50 people in that Zoom, just for Southeast Asia, and they're having it in sub-regions as well. So I think that's the biggest legacy for the Rugby World Cup. You have people who are really wanting to invest their time, whether they are, gainfully employed or whether they're volunteering. I think that's really unique in that sense.
Fantastic stuff. Sounds like the future is bright within Asia Rugby, and obviously with you helping bring the scene up. I'm really proud of you, Ridzal, flying the Singapore flag high for rugby in Singapore and at the world stage. It's been great having you chatting with us.
Thank you, Duncan.
A fantastic episode of Rugby Lives Here, and you can expect more of this kind of content. Just join us every Thursday at 7 p.m. We will see you next week.